Welcome to Build and Tinker. On this episode, I'm going to go over constructing the Killian Ink Duelist deck that we have built for our most recent episode. With this creature, for black and white, you get a 2/2 legendary creature, human warlock, lifelink and menace, and spells you cast that target a creature cost 2 less to cast. The goal of this deck is to create a lot of synergies with that last ability and target either Killian or other creatures with some enchantments, as well as get cost reduction on removal and other benefits from having him on board. So I have the commander up in the top corner. Going to start with some very basics here. I have 3 mass removal spells that I'm looking at: Wrath of God, Doomscar, and Day of Judgment. All basically do the same thing. I really like Doomscar. Kind of lets you set it aside until you need it and gets it out of your hand early to spend some of that mana. None of these synergize really well with Killian, except for the fact that they just kind of keep you in the game. So I'm going to put these aside, but we'll get them in the deck. Then I have a bunch of lands, mostly your staples. Given that we are in black and white, need kind of some synergies there for as much as we can for mana fixing and land ramp, since there's not a lot of ramp in either black or white as much as you would get in green. So your basic Terramorphic Expanse, Evolving Wilds, Command Tower, Myriad Landscape, kind of anything that can help us color fix or get some pieces out. Obviously, Bajuka Bog is going to be in there because it's black. Anytime I have a black deck, I like sticking that in there to get some value out of it. All right, let's get into some of the heart of the cards here. First, I want to focus on some of the auras that we have put into the deck. These are really what's going to get you the win. So the goal here, and I'm going to set these aside because we have some instants. We have a few creatures that we can play that kind of get that synergy as well. But a number of auras here will get us where we want to get to. So if we look at several of these, we have Daybreak Coronet, Shielded by Faith, Gift of Doom, Ethereal Armor, Demonic Embrace, Angelic Destiny, Gift of Orzava, and Celestial Mantle. Each of these will get that cost reduction and make them easier to cast, with the exception of Daybreak Coronet and Ethereal Armor. Both of those are just really strong cards, and this one, they synergize with other enchantments, right? So Ethereal Armor, you get +1/+1 for each enchantment you control. Daybreak Coronet, you have to have another enchantment on board, but it kind of gets you that value of having more enchantments in play. These other ones really just do as they say. They give you double strike, lifelink, pump up the creature, something that gets you more value. I really like Angelic Destiny. It basically just becomes a white for a +4/+4 first strike, angel, flying, and returns it to your hand when it dies. Very powerful, and in a black-white deck, should be very easy to get out once you have your commander on board. So just a handful of enchantments to kind of pump up your creatures. The next set we want to look at are very similar. They are enchantments, but these act, I'll say, somewhat differently. Just kidding, that one's a removal. That does not go there. So we have 3 of them here. We have a couple of Mutate cards. There's a few more Mutate we could have put in here, but Mutate does target. So Cub Warden and Dirgeback, get those in there and get them onto your commander, onto a creature for that Mutate cost, get the Mutate ability off. But if you don't have that, you get that synergy of being able to play the creature as well. So those are there. Night Howler, this was actually pretty fun when I played it last time. You got to do the bestow. What's even better is when the main creature dies, this falls off and becomes a creature itself. So it pumps up your commander, makes your commander actually very strong and a little bit harder to take on. But it is synergistic on the number of creature cards in all graveyards. So probably more of a later game type play when there are creature cards in graveyards. Now for some pump spells. Again, kind of going for the same type of effect where we get some of that cost reduction. Ajani's Influence becomes 2 white. You get to put 2 +1/+1 counters and card draw, so a little bit of value there. Exhilarating Elocution, same kind of deal, +1/+1, but it does pump up your board. So when it's time to attack, you can get in for some more. Apostle's Blessing, this is actually becomes 1 either white or 2 life, which is kind of nice at an instant, because if you target your commander for protection and don't have any mana up, with that cost reduction, you're just paying the 2 life, which is very beneficial. And then Silver Quill Command, as long as you target a creature, which is that first ability. You give your own creature +3/+3 in flying for effectively black and white. You then get the second one at that cost reduction. So you can draw a card yourself. You can sacrifice have an opponent sacrifice a creature, kind of anything you want to do there. So some nice flexibility there. Those are kind of the how do we win, how do we kind of continually get that value from the commander. I'll say there's a handful of the other way, and these are where we get into the removal. So this is how do we take advantage of that ability for the removal side of life and kind of make sure that you can stay in the game. So there's a couple of enchantments there that I like. Darkstone Mutation, 1,000 Lashes, Pillory of the Sleepless. These all get reduced in cost, so effectively becoming white, black, white, to shut down an opponent's commander. So those are very good, very fun, as long as your commander's on board. And Giant Killer, if you play this for its instant cost, you can basically get it for a white, destroy target creature with power 4 or greater. I really like that. And then for another white, you get a 1/2 human peasant on board. The human peasant, not too important, but it does give you a target for your enchantments. And then a number of instants and sorceries here that can kind of get some value. Kind of went deep into the bin when I was looking through these. I wanted to kind of get some ideas for cards I don't really see a lot of play and take advantage of some of those. So, Feed the Serpent, if you go for a creature, it becomes 2 black. I really like, where is it? Liturgy of Blood. It basically becomes free. So you play 1 black, and you get 3 black back. So you get to destroy target creature for effectively 0, as long as your commander's on board. So that's kind of fun. A lot of these other ones get some other values. This one's Closing Statement's very fun because it actually could be just black and a white because it costs 2 less on your end step and then 2 more or less with Killian on board. So for black and a white, you get to destroy target creature and put a +1/+1 counter on one of your creatures. And you can kind of see the other ones: Profane Command, Expel, Kibera Takedown. I like it can be both a land or late game. For 1 white, you take the number of creatures you have and just target a creature and deal some damage there. Or Planeswalkers, which provides some of that flexibility. Expel effectively becomes a path to exile with actually no downside other than it has to be a tapped creature. So that's pretty fun. And then Erebos' Intervention, you get to do both. You get to nuke a creature and gain some life at the same time, which is cool, but you get that for 2 less. So you're actually going to gain extra life and be able to take out an extra creature on that one. So that's some of the removal. It's kind of removal heavy at this point. I think that's by design. You typically need to be able to get rid of a creature to be able to get in. If you have a flying creature commander that's been kind of Voltroned up a bit and they have a flyer, you want to be able to remove their flyer so you can get in for that damage. That's really one of the biggest pieces of this deck. So what else do we have in here? There's a couple of other stacks. You can see I have 3 more stacks here. This one, your basic ramp, nothing terribly exciting in here. I have a black market. The diamonds I think are pretty good in here. Just for 2 mana, you can't play anything else. You at least get some mana ramp. Probably be the first ones to come out if I found something better to put in. A couple of creatures that get you some ramp, as well as your signets, your talismans, soul rings, so on and so forth. So nothing terribly exciting in that bunch. But if we look at the other creatures we have in the deck, these are really trying to build off of what the commander has with that Menace and Lifelink. Not really either one, but trying to get you some of that value with either having Menace, Lifelink, Flying, Shadow. We got some here with, where is it? Intimidate. So a lot of these, I don't know that any of these individually are going to win you the game. But the idea being, if your commander gets taken off the board, you can at least play some other creatures that have more value and are likely to get in. This does become a bit of a combat type deck, so you need to be able to get in there for some of that damage. So these are pretty fun cards. They all have their own little things that they do. None of them are, I'll say, super powerful on their own, in that I'm not going to expect to, this isn't my win con. That's not my win con. There isn't really a win con among all these decks other than the ability to continue playing your enchantments and some of your other pieces. Obviously, Mongera the Diplomat is a very good source of card draw if you can get him out. And at 2/4, not too much of a threat, but if you need to pump him up, you can, and that will get you some of that extra life back, which is really fun. The last group I have here is the kind of the synergistic pieces. So these are the ones that really go well with either an enchantment themed deck or just kind of pumping up your creatures. So we'll cover both Athraioses. I have these in here because I want them to be able to return creatures to my hand, right? So Shroud Veiled gets you that coin counter on a creature, return it back to your hand. And God of Passage, every time they try to kill your Voltron kind of commander, you're kind of, all that investment you put in there, they need to pay 3 life or you're just going to get it back and be able to play it. The enchantments will fall off and go into the graveyard, but not too big of a deal if you can kind of keep recasting some of those. So I really like the Athraioses. I think those are fun in this deck. I have a number of pumps here. So we have Force of Virtue, Ethereal Absolution, True Conviction, Spirit of Heliod, Citadel Siege, not really kind of, I'll say direct synergy, but just as you play lands, just kind of build up on your creatures with that +1/+1. Or I actually like the flexibility here. If you do have a table that is playing a lot of single creature card decks, you can go the Dragons route on this. And beginning of combat, you tap target creature that player controls. So this is another way to get rid of the flyer that's in the way. If they have 2 creatures, tap one of them down, suddenly they can't block your Menace commander. Those are pretty fun to play with as well. So those are pretty good, kind of just little anthems. They kind of stick on the board. Some of them do additional pieces, some of them don't. Sigarda's Aid, I actually put this in there early on in the original. I don't know that it actually fits anymore the more I kind of look at the deck, but this was kind of a way to say if you have your commander on, you can kind of wait until it gets to your turn, or rather to the end step before your turn, to get some of those enchantments on. And that way, it's 1, your mana saved up, but 2, the commander isn't as a threat as it goes around the board. So that was one of the reasons why Sigarda's Egg was in this deck. Sigil of the Empty Throne, just some enchantment synergy here. If you can get this out and start playing some of these other cards, either these enchantments here or the ones we talked about earlier, you're just going to get some angels. And then those angels you can pump up. So obviously a good card for 5 mana. You're not going to be able to cost reduce that at all, but still fun. Blind Obedience, I think, is a fun card. Artifacts and creatures your opponents control enter tapped, and you can extort when you cast a spell. So it is one of those ways, if you just have some extra mana, get some damage in, get some life gain. But more importantly, with the Menace commander, you're going to be able to tap down one of their creatures if it's their second one coming in, or their third or their fourth. And again, try to get in for some of that damage before they go in for the removal. And then Norn's Annex, if you only have 1 creature on board and you're attacking with it, you're going to get attacked a lot. I like this card. I think it's a little less aggressive than Propaganda, given that you can pay the 2 life, or rather your opponents can, to attack you. So if they do want to get in with 5 creatures to kind of finish the game, they just have to pay that 10 life, which kind of helps the board a bit, but it's a little less aggressive than Propaganda, where you have to do the 2 mana. But if they have the mana, they can go ahead and dump it on there. And then just a couple of more synergistic cards here. So Malakir Rebirth does really the same what the Athreos gods do. It lets you choose a creature. You're not going to get cost reduction, but it can become a swamp if you needed to. As the game goes on, or even early in the game, and you basically just return it to the battlefield. So even if they do kill your creature, the enchantments will fall off, but it can still come back in. And then Open the Vaults gets all your enchantments and artifacts out of the graveyard and onto the battlefield. I think this is going to be a great late game card. This is one of those where, as the game's going on, it's probably getting close to the end. You might have 3 or 4 or 5 enchantments in the graveyard. Play this, pop them onto your commander, and you can get in for some damage. So overall, this deck is played pretty well. We did talk about it on our most recent episode. It was episode 7. We go over some of the details, some of the specific cards, some strategies in depth. We don't go over every card like we do here. We kind of pick some of the themes. And then after I've played it, we're going to get over to Russ. He's going to go ahead and play it for about a week or 2 and then start tinkering with it a bit, put some cards in, take some cards out, kind of see where it goes from there. And go ahead and give us a follow. You can find us at MTG Build Tinker on Twitter. You can find us on all the podcast apps at MTG Build and Tinker, or go ahead and leave us a comment here. Thanks, and if you have any comments, let us know.